Not every revolution begins with a bang. Some start with silence. Tehran, the city is humming, shiny, modern, westernized. Streets paved with ambition. Cadillacs glide past neon-lit cafes. The Shah rules with polished confidence, wrapped in the glow of American friendship and oil wealth. But silence hides things. And 150 kilometers away, in the sacred city of Qom, something is stirring. A quiet man sits in the shadows of his modest home, writing. He's not famous, not yet. But his words carry weight. They cut through the silence like a scalpel. Islam is not a religion of retreat, he writes. It is a religion of politics. His name is Ayatollah Khomeini, and right now he's not leading a movement, he's planting one. The Shah, meanwhile, has his eyes set on modernization, the White Revolution, they called it. Land reform, women's rights, Western education. But for many Iranians, especially the poor and the pious, it felt less like progress, and more like erasure. Khomeini saw through it. To him, the Shah wasn't just a king, he was a puppet. And the hands holding the strings, foreign ones. What terrified the regime wasn't the volume of Khomeini's voice, it was the frequency. Cassette tapes of his sermons began circulating underground. Scribbled quotes passed between students. Whispers grew louder, and though he had no army, no weapons, and no political office, Khomeini had conviction. And conviction? That spreads. This was the beginning, not the moment of explosion, but the moment of ignition. The moment a scholar became a symbol. The moment an empire felt a tremor, and didn't yet know it was an earthquake. They thought exile would silence him. They thought distance would dilute his message. But exile didn't weaken Khomeini. It weaponized him. In 1964, the Shah's regime finally pulled the trigger. After a series of fiery sermons and a bold stand against U.S. influence, Khomeini was arrested. Again, but this time, they didn't just lock him up. They shipped him out. First to Turkey, then to Iraq. Out of sight, out of mind, right? Except not even close. While the Shah was busy polishing the image of a modern monarch, wearing tailored suits and shaking hands with presidents, Khomeini's words were spreading like smoke under a locked door. In the back alleys of Tehran, cassette tapes crackled with defiance. Across mosques, whispers carried sermons that hit harder than any bullet. Students, merchants, clerics, people from all corners of Iranian life were tuning into a revolution still in its prelude. This wasn't just political anymore. It was personal, spiritual, existential. And while Khomeini paced the courtyards of Najaf, a holy city in Iraq where he lived in modest exile, he wasn't plotting revenge. He was redrawing the blueprint for a nation. There, he refined his boldest theory yet. Velayat-e-faqih, the guardianship of the Islamic jurist. A vision where the state isn't run by kings, presidents, or parliaments, but by clerics. Religious scholars as rulers, the divine as law. It was radical. It was chilling. And it would change Iran forever. But even from exile, Khomeini knew one thing. Ideas have wings. You can chain a man. You can erase his name from the news, but you can't stop a message that makes people feel seen, or heard, or angry. And in Iran, anger was boiling. Poverty, corruption, foreign interference. The people were losing faith in the monarchy, and gaining it, unknowingly, in a man who hadn't set foot on Iranian soil in over a decade. In the shadows of palaces, fear was growing. Not of armies, not of tanks, but of a voice, distant, steady, relentless. Revolutions aren't always sparked by the loudest scream. Sometimes it's the voice that never goes silent. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps more than you think, and it gives us the inspiration to keep making more. Thank you, everyone. Let's jump back. By the late 1970s, Iran was a pressure cooker. On the surface, still polished, fancy cars, royal parades, Shah smiling in magazine spreads, but underneath, boiling rage, poverty, corruption, brutal suppression, and a voice, still in exile, but growing louder by the minute. Khomeini was no longer just a cleric with a theory. He had become a myth, a symbol, a kind of living ghost, haunting the regime through bootleg cassettes and photocopied speeches. Death to the Shah, people began to chant in the streets, and Khomeini? He wasn't calming them down. He was guiding the fire. Protests broke out in waves, then in floods, thousands in the streets, students, workers, religious scholars, even middle-class citizens who once supported the Shah, all shouting the same thing. Enough. The government responded with what governments do best: force, martial law, tear gas, bullets. But they were shooting at ghosts, because this wasn't just a protest anymore. It was a movement with a soul, and every time someone died, the crowds got bigger. Funerals turned into rallies, blood on the streets turned into fuel. Then came 1978, the tipping point. The Shah's grip was slipping. America, his greatest ally, started distancing itself. He was sick, out of touch, paranoid. Meanwhile, Khomeini, now exiled in France of all places, was giving press conferences in gardens outside Paris, calm, composed, surrounded by international media, delivering revolutionary messages like they were morning news briefings. And somehow, it worked. The exiled cleric became the voice of a nation. From halfway across the world, he was leading a revolution without setting foot on Iranian soil, until the regime collapsed. January 16, 1979, the Shah fled Iran. 2 weeks later, Khomeini returned. After 15 years in exile, the plane landed to a crowd of over 1 million people, cheering, crying, collapsing with emotion. It wasn't just the return of a man. It was the arrival of something new, something ancient and revolutionary at the same time, something that would reshape the country and history forever. Decades have passed since 1979, but Ayatollah Khomeini's revolution still echoes through every corner of Iran. His return wasn't just a political shakeup, it was a seismic reset of identity, power, and purpose. The monarchy fell, and in its place rose something never before seen, a modern Islamic theocracy, born from the ashes of empire and colonial puppeteering. Khomeini didn't just want to lead, he wanted to reshape Iran's soul, and he did. He rewrote laws, redefined institutions, and rewired the very DNA of governance. Democracy existed on paper, but only within the bounds of religious guardianship. That's how the supreme leader role came to be. Not just symbolic, but supreme in every real sense. A cleric with the power to overrule presidents, parliaments, and even public will. Today, that system still stands. Presidents are elected, but only after being vetted by the Guardian Council, a body of clerics and jurists loyal to the ideals Khomeini laid down. Dissent is not illegal, but it's dangerous. Power remains concentrated in the hands of a few, and the revolutionary ideals of 1979 are now institutionalized doctrine. But Iran is not a monolith. A restless young generation, born long after the revolution, is growing louder. These are kids who grew up online, who watch global protests on TikTok, who dream beyond borders. They challenge compulsory hijabs, demand economic reform, and question why their freedoms are filtered through religious control. They chant in the streets, not for a new president, but for a new system entirely. And yet, millions still revere Khomeini. To them, he's a national savior, the man who broke the West's grip, who restored pride, and who brought Islam back to the forefront. His portrait still looms large in government halls, mosques, classrooms. His words are taught not as history, but as doctrine. This is Iran today, a nation suspended between reverence and rebellion, between memory and momentum. The revolution hasn't ended, it's evolved, and so has the debate about what it truly meant. Did Khomeini rescue Iran, or reshape it into something else entirely? That's not just a question for historians. It's the very question modern Iran is still trying to answer. History doesn't always leave us with clear answers, just echoes, contradictions, and questions that refuse to die. Ayatollah Khomeini changed Iran forever. Whether that change was salvation or suppression depends on who you ask. But one thing's for sure. The revolution didn't end in 1979. It just began a new chapter. If you found this journey through Iran's past as intense and thought-provoking as we did, drop a like, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. We've got more deep dives, dark truths, and untold stories coming soon. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious.